I've heard it said that culture overrides vision and getting your team where you want it to be. Today, we will talk about steps to change your culture.
My name is Ava Andrews, and like you, I serve in local church worship ministry. It's a joy to sing, worship, and help lead in the church, and that's why we're so passionate about the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast. Each episode is an opportunity to focus on practical aspects of local church ministry. We're glad you've joined us today. We're praying for you, and for now, let's jump into today's episode.
How's it going, Tim?
It's going great. How are you doing?
Oh, doing pretty good. So what about this idea of culture trumping vision?
Well, vision is still important. We don't want to give up on that. It really is the direction you're heading. But no matter how many times you share the vision, if the culture of your team or your organization is working against it, you won't get very far.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about this. And the first thing is to determine your culture goal.
Yeah, and some of this sounds like so hard to do, but really it's just a matter of just determining how you'd like your team to be. And, everybody has a vision of what they want their team to be like. I guess decipher the difference between these two. A vision is that your team is going to help lead your church and grow it through authentic worship and leadership. You keep pointing to that. But then the culture is how your team lives that out each day. And so one of the reasons this is really so difficult to change is because you're never starting from scratch unless it's a brand new church and ministry team. A culture already exists in your team today. And so it takes a little bit of time determining and pinpointing what the culture of your team is now and determining how you'd like it to be different. So I know in some of the organizations I lead that you and I are part of, Clint, Harvest World especially, a lot of what we do is show up, crank up a sound check, start playing while people are walking in, or a summer camp that's like even worse.
Yeah.
And so as a result, I tend to create a culture of making things work. And that doesn't always translate to, the best way for, an ongoing long-term church setting. So the best way for me to think about it is to think, what could we change this year? Instead of trying to morph into, an elevation type worship team with 250 people involved every single week or anything like that, is just to think, what one or two things could we do with our team this year to increase to help our culture match our vision? And a couple of those examples might just be to grow more in spiritual growth as a team, to build a culture of being punctual, or build a culture of really rehearsing before you come to the rehearsal, or build a culture of kindness among your team members if that's an issue, or encouragement. Or one I would love to keep trying is to build a culture of being willing to try creative things, even if it doesn't work. So, just to be willing to fail if you need to. So
that's good. So you work through this, and like all these podcasts that we do, it's rarely an overnight thing. It requires patience.
Yep.
But here are some simple steps, and the first one is keep living into it.
Yeah, and I'm happy to hear your thoughts on this too. This is just one of those things that you almost have to lead by example. And if you're not leading by example, you basically aren't leading at all, because you can't just say, "Hey guys, change the culture around here." I mean, it requires living into it. So if you're wanting to highlight this idea of being willing to try new things, well, basically you're going to have to try new things. And then as you do that, the culture will continue to snowball. Whatever it is you pinpoint and you want to change, you keep doing it, keep highlighting it, keep writing and talking about it, and just help your group, think that it's normal.
Yeah.
And one time I heard somebody say, if you want to grow your church, act twice your size. So if you need 3 people to greet people on Sundays, get 6. And,
I got you.
And then you'll just kind of, grow into what you're wanting it to be.
Yeah.
So
no, that's a good one. For some reason, this one, and kind of what you said, reminds me of a picture that isn't really like related to this, but like, it's a picture of like people who are like pulling a boulder or whatever, and like someone who's living into it is like the leader out front, helping his team pull it. Whereas like if you're not living into it, you're kind of like hindering it, and you're like adding weight on top of that to whatever it is, and trying to cause your team to do all the work.
Yeah, that's a good image.
Yeah. So living into it, that's the first one. The next one here is build on what you have.
The best way to change a culture is to celebrate, kind of. And I know celebrate is on down the list, I think, but building on what you have is really capitalizing on the good things you have going and saying, hey, this is great. And maybe even looking back, we've done that before, where we look back and say, wow, there was a time not too many years ago that we printed all the songs, we used wedge monitors, and we didn't have rehearsal. So now all of a sudden, everything's on iPad except for the people that are watching the screen in the back, and we have rehearsals and we, have in-ears. I mean, it's just like this whole transition. So you build on what you have, and you talk about the good things and celebrate the good things that are going on in your ministry. It's basically taking stock of those places and then saying, now we've gotten here. Now we're going to go there.
Yeah.
And I heard somebody one time say something like, the best thing you can do after you give a compliment is add the word now and keep on going. That's how you coach people.
Yeah.
So, man, you did an awesome job. Now I want you to do this.
Yeah.
And it just helps, build momentum.
Yeah.
So
that's a good one. Yeah. Building on what you already have is key, because sometimes like those little tweaks of what you're already doing can help step things up to the next level, whatever. I just did air quotes as if you can see me, but that little next level of, whatever it might be, so that's a good one.
Yep.
All right. The next one is notice when people are doing it.
Yeah, this is the celebrating one. So you really got to celebrate if you see somebody adhering to this culture or helping to build a culture. One of the things that I try to do is when people respond on Planning Center and it's quick, I always try to send them an email and say, wow, that was quick. Thank you so much for responding.
Oh, that's good.
If somebody ever sends me a note with a new song idea, I am bad at keeping track of that for the long term, but I try at least to say, hey, thanks for the song idea, because that's like a culture thing for everybody to be thinking about what you're going to be moving toward. If you can notice those things and celebrate them, then the old adage, what gets celebrated gets repeated, is like played out in your ministry. So
this is like celebrate basically expectations. So what if like expectations aren't going as planned? What do you do? Like you're celebrating when people like succeed in expectations. What do we do like if people aren't meeting expectations?
If somebody's not living up to what you're trying to accomplish, some of that is cultural, like punctuality for your team. Like if that's not happening, then how do you get somebody to do it?
Yeah.
Well, that's the fun part. Everybody's got their own unique style.
Yeah.
I've always been one to basically sort of figure out a way to love them into this culture, patient enough with chaos that I just, it probably goes on a little bit longer than it needs to. And usually it works, or it kind of quietly just kind of fades. I can imagine that if there's something major, then it would have to be addressed. And there have been times when I've had to do that.
Oh, gotcha.
And, if it's something major, what you want to do stepwise, and you probably talk to this just as much as I can, but if it's documented, that's easy. Like if, one of our documentations for our ministry in Harvest World is that, summer team kind of code of ethics type thing is we don't want people living together before they're married.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just such a standard thing in my mind, but in the culture's mind and just our society, that's so normal.
Yeah.
And when you bump up against an issue like that, you gotta, it helps me sometimes think, well, I want to have grace, I want to have mercy, but I also want to challenge them. I don't want friends and family and other people and myself to think, oh, yeah, this is all just totally fine. I'm just working with this either way. And so you bring it up and you say something and you just deal with the consequences after that. So
you brought that's such a good point, and it reminded me I was at a conference, and I think it was Eric Mason who was speaking. He's from East Coast, I believe, but he was talking about his college ministry and young adult ministry, and whenever he found out that his people were like living together or whatever, before they were married, he would like give them an ultimatum of like married in 30 days kind of a thing. Like, I will marry you within the next 30 days if you want to keep living together. Or like he removed them from the team.
Yeah.
Didn't remove them from like, the church or anything like that. But it's like, you're not meeting these expectations, you know?
And it's weird. I think Ava and I talked about this on a podcast recently, that it is strange that worship ministry has become such a hot commodity that there's different standards for the worship team.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Anybody can join a choir and
Yeah.
nobody really knows. But as soon as you're signed up for the worship band in any kind of modern church setting of any kind of church of any kind of size, it's like firecrackers just went off, and if you do anything, you're out.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I kind of want to revolt against that because everybody's a mess. But on the other hand, I also realize that there's a holiness factor and a leadership factor, and all the First Timothy list of what you need to be, and you got a microphone, you're faced with. I mean, it just goes on and on. But I wrote a post like 3 years ago that was about cohabitating before living together. And I've never posted it.
You never posted it?
One of these days I need to.
You should totally just throw it in here.
3 things for the sake of, and we're focused on just like one tiny issue here.
It was just an example that was,
But the 3 things were really things that I just wanted like my daughters to know, like before they get to an age where they get into themselves in a place that out of convenience they would do something that jeopardizes the possibility of happy marriage and those other things. And just in case I never post that and somebody's listening here, one of the best things that stuck with me from reading a book that was authored by a female was, you never audition to be a bride. She said it disheartens her to think how many women audition to be the first place in a man's life.
That's solid.
By just living at home with him.
Yeah.
Like, man, that's like terrible.
Yeah.
So I've always thought that's good for young girls to know. But
all right, well that's I mean, I know that wasn't on our list, but that was a good one to kind of talk about there. Our next bullet point is to share it.
Yep. So you're talking about culture, and you want to share your ideas for building a great culture.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really work to say, all right, guys, we need to be more loving. When we show up to praise band practice, everybody give everybody a hug because we're in COVID. Or as my brother said yesterday, now we got Snowvid.
Snowvid.
Which dates this thing.
Yeah, you really just did. This whole time I've been looking at your patio out here.
It could be.
It's covered in snow, and I just wanted to say something about it. Yeah, you broke the ice.
Broke the ice, I get it. Anyway, some of the ways that I think this works better, as opposed to just sending out a memo or making an announcement, is to just talk to some of your leaders, one-on-one conversations. This is like the 9 to 10 p.m. hour after rehearsal's over, of just talking to a couple people saying, yeah, we really got to get this going or that going. Yeah. The other day, one of our guys sent me an image of an iceberg, and the very tip of it was worship ministry on Sundays. And then underneath it was this huge mess of just everything related to online and sound and tech and people and preparation, all this stuff. And he's like, we should use this for a meeting sometime. And I was like, yeah, that's really true, because that's the kind of stuff that, helps grow a culture.
You need to share that in the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast community on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'll stick it in there.
All right, Tim, it looks like we're at our last one. Number 5, invite people to join you.
Yeah. And this is really just a style of including people and having ownership. So more again than just sending out a memo, it's inviting people to pray for and think about the process of shifting culture. Mm-hmm. And one reason for a culture shift in any fashion, even if it is just 1 or 2 small things for this whole year, is that it's motivating. And so the more people experience that success and see it, it inspires others and inspires them to keep serving in these roles. And one of the inspirations for me in terms of inviting people to join us is, and reason to have a great culture, is because we need to build things for who is next. So I've been doing worship ministry in both of the avenues that I serve for since the 90s. And at some point, somebody else is going to be taking the helm and taking the lead and being a part of it. And the last thing I want to do is leave them with a culture that's just sort of like drab or status quo or, just whatever, we make it, or anything like that. We want to have a culture that is set up so that people know that we're doing something important and we are making these changes and making this happen for those who are going to come after us. And so inviting people to join you in that, and also inviting people to join you in prayer for your team and your ministry. That's always a great invitation. So
that's good. And we're praying for you and your church. And as we keep growing our ministries, we trust God's Spirit to instill a culture of humility, service, and a desire to share and lift up the name of Jesus.
Yep. Well, thanks for being a part of this podcast, Clint, and blessings to everyone.
All right, and as we leave here, we want to remind you to subscribe and give this podcast a 5-star rating. We also want to turn your attention to the website where you can find blogs and resources for your ministry. If you're looking for some training, we have our Awakening Worship Conference archives up. It's free to you. All you have to do is click on the link, enter your name and email address, and you'll have immediate access to 14 or 15 videos that we use during the 2020 Awakening Digital Conference. It's all at worshipleadertoolbox.com. Thanks.
Thanks again for joining us. We so appreciate you. If you have any questions, you can find out more about our ministry by going to worshipleadertoolbox.com. Join us again next time. We're looking forward to it.